Welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. My name is Tom Connors, and today I'm going to review the new film, It. But first we're going to take a look at the history of the novel, the 1990 miniseries, and how the latest film got to the big screen. Stephen King's It was published in 1986 and became a huge hit. Having the story gestate in his mind for over a decade, King finally began writing the epic horror story in 1981. King was very well known for such then-already classics as Carrie and The Shining. King's stories were very sought-after commodities for adaptations. ABC had acquired the rights to a television miniseries of It for what would be the first made-for-television film based on a Stephen King work since Salem's Lot in 1979. It would open the door for a floodgate of King adaptations for the small screen in the years to come. According to King, he had little to no involvement in the writing of the miniseries. George A. Romero had originally been signed on to direct the project, which at the time, ABC had planned for an 8 to 10 hour miniseries. Romero left the project due to a scheduling conflict, after which ABC condensed to a 3-part series. In the end, Halloween 3 director and well-known John Carpenter collaborator Tommy Lee Wallace was brought in to direct. After Wallace signed on to the project, ABC had ultimately decided to condense the series down to 2 parts after they got cold feet due to the nature of the story and commitment to such a long schedule. Given the length of the novel at just over 1,100 pages and the film's complete 2-part running time down to 192 minutes, Wallace regrets in retrospect that he didn't familiarize himself with the book before taking on the miniseries in 1990. In the end, though, the television miniseries was a smash hit, pulling in over 30 million viewers. The budget was set at $12 million, though still not a lot for the time. That's pretty good for a TV film with many special effects, as It boasted. The money was well spent. At the time, the It miniseries pushed boundaries for network television and is arguably one of the most well-known TV miniseries behind Roots and North and South. After Roddy McDowall and Malcolm McDowell were considered for the role of the film's namesake, the part finally went to Tim Curry, whose masterful portrayal of the killing machine that takes the guise of Pennywise the Dancing Clown and is the backbone of what is a very well-constructed and mostly well-casted made-for-TV miniseries. Though missing a great deal of the source material, the film was still a critical hit and has been a huge cult classic ever since. Producer Lawrence D. Cohen has this to say about what made the cut from the original novel and what didn't. I look at it as a glass half full situation. There are scenes in both nights that were created by Steve on the page, and I'm delighted they survived, like the fortune cookie scene and adult Beverly going to her childhood house. The way I see it, the best moments from the books made the cut, and the rest are casualties of war. The filming went well according to reports, and the cast has been known to reflect on the period with great fondness. Outside of a few major issues with the effects in the third act, it seems that the film set out to do what the makers had intended. The TV movie does capture the broad strokes of the story, but is understandably not going to live up to such a massive behemoth of a book. It was no surprise with the film's status that Warner Brothers would go back to It and try to make it a big screen adaptation. Rumors permeated for years, but the first solid movement came on March 12, 2009. Variety reported that Warner Brothers would be bringing Stephen King's novel to the big screen, with David Kochnick, best known for The Invasion and True Story, to adapt King's novel, while Dan Lin, Roy Lee, and Doug Davidson would produce the piece. Warner Brothers was committed to adapting it as a single feature film, so Kochnick began to reread the novel in an attempt to try and find a structure that would accommodate such a large number of characters with 2 different time periods, around 120 pages, which was one of Warner Brothers' stipulations. He worked with Lin, Lee, and Davison on The Invasion in 2007. Warner's is known to be a filmmaker-friendly studio, and he felt that they would allow him, at the time, to work out a solid first draft of the screenplay. Kochnick spoke of the remake as being set in the, quote, mid-1980s and the present, mirroring the 20-year-odd gap King uses in the book, with a great deal of care and attention paid to the backstories of all the characters. Most of the fans of the novel weren't too happy to hear of the news of the film being compressed into such a confined space. The only good news was that the film was indeed going to be rated R, so that the restraints, though it damn near busted through those, in the miniseries wouldn't be a burden here. Just the same, most were skeptical such a feat could be pulled off, and obviously wasn't what Warner Brothers was looking for, because they told him to go back and do it again, and a rewrite was announced in June of 2010. Then 2 years had passed without any movement whatsoever. On June 7, 2012, The Hollywood Reporter had revealed that Cary Fukunaga was boarding the project as the director and would co-write the script with Chase Palmer and Roy Lee and Dan Lin producing, as with Seth Grahame-Smith and David Katzenberg of Cat Smith Productions. On May 21, 2014, Warner Brothers had announced to have moved the film to its New Line Cinema division, with New Line's Walter Hamada and David Neustadter overlooking the project, along with Vice President of Production at Warner Brothers, Nija Kuykendall. On December 5, 2014, in an interview with Vulture, Dan Lin announced that the first film would be a coming-of-age story about the children tormented by it, and the second will skip ahead in time as those same characters band together to continue to fight as adults. Lin also stated that Fukunaga was only committed to directing the first film, but was currently closing a deal to co-write the second. Lin concluded by mentioning King, to which he remarked, quote, "The most important thing is that King gave us his blessing. We didn't want to make this unless he felt that this was the right way to go. And when we sent him the script, the response that Cary got back was, 'This is the version the studio should make.' So that was really gratifying," unquote. Lin confirmed that Fukunaga would begin principal photography in summer of 2016. Not even a half a year later, on May 25, 2015, it was reported that Fukunaga had dropped out of the project. According to the Wrap, he clashed with the studio and didn't want to compromise his vision in the wake of the budget cuts by New Line Cinema, which greenlit his first film at $30 million. However, Fukunaga maintained, though, that this wasn't the case, claiming that the clashing with New Line over the direction of the story really was the problem. Quote, "I was trying to make an unconventional horror film. It didn't fit into the algorithm of what they knew they would spend and make money back on, based on not offending their standard genre audience. The latter may not have been something that WB was very happy with, considering that the miniseries Pennywise in his clown form is a lot more prominent due to the restrictions at the time. But because of Curry's performance, Pennywise has become quite popular among the horror community and beyond." Fukunaga concluded by stating, quote, "We invested years, so much anecdotal storytelling in it. Chase and I both put our childhood into that story. So our biggest fear was that they were going to take our script and bastardize it. So I'm actually thankful that they're going to rewrite the script. I wouldn't want them stealing our childhood memories and using that. I was honoring King's spirit of it, but I needed to update it. King saw the early first draft and liked it," unquote. On Fukunaga's departure, King wrote, quote, "The remake of It may be dead or undead, but we'll always have Tim Curry. He's still floating down in the sewers of Derry." On July 16, 2015, it was announced that Andres Muschietti, best known for the horror thriller Mama, was in negotiations to direct It, with New Line beginning a search for a new writer to tailor the script to Muschietti's vision, with the announcement also confirming the possible participation of Muschietti's sister, Barbara, as producer, with Richard Brenner joining Hamada, Neustadter, and Kuykendall to oversee the project. On April 22, 2016, it was indicated that Will Powder, who was casted as Pennywise in Fukunaga's version, had dropped out of the film due to scheduling conflict, according to reports. That same day, New Line Cinema also announced that they had set the film for a release date of September 8, 2017. The film would come together quickly after that, and despite Fukunaga's hopes, he is still credited as one of the writers. It's likely that portions of his version are still present. The young cast was announced shortly thereafter. Joining would be Jaden Lieberer, Jeremy Ray Taylor, Sophia Lillis, Chosen Jacobs, Jack Dylan Grazer, and Wyatt Oleff. And finally, it was announced that Bill Skarsgård of Hemlock Grove fame would take over the role as Pennywise. In speaking about staying with an R rating, in an interview from July 12, 2017, producer Barbara Muschietti added that there was only one scene that was deemed too horrific to feature in the new adaptation, in which she stated, quote, "You won't find the scene where the kid has his back broken and is thrown in the toilets. We thought that the visual translation of that scene had something that was really too much," unquote. Muschietti concluded, emphasizing that nothing was removed from the original vision, nor was the violence of any event watered down. It was reported, though, after early screenings, that another infamous part in the book that dealt with underage sex was also removed. Shortly before the film was set to be released, it was confirmed that the young cast was finalizing deals to return in flashbacks, and the casting would begin shortly on the adult version counterparts. Just over a year after principal photography rolled on the film, It has finally made its way to the theaters. after a nearly 10-year trip from first being announced. Does the film live up to the book? And does it outgrow the miniseries and Tim Curry's very long shadow? Mostly no, but a little yes. The main elements of the story are still there, kind of. A group of young bullied misfits band together in the summer of 1989 to face off against an entity that feeds on them and their fears. The creature they dub It takes on many forms, but usually the form of a clown, and calls himself Pennywise, the dancing clown. What I did like in the film was the young cast does do well with what they are given, and they have some great chemistry and humor. Unfortunately, that's about as far as the praise goes on my behalf. The movie is pretty brisk, but I feel it may be at the risk of story and structure. Truth is, if you're unfamiliar with the book or at least the miniseries, you may get a little lost or not understand a lot of the references. There are plenty of payoffs, but the setups are nowhere to be found. Surely casualties on the cutting room floor, something WB is well known for. Skarsgård isn't horrible as Pennywise, but he doesn't bring anything new to the part, and when the effects take over, to some it will come off as cheesy and wonky like myself, and feel very forced, along with far too many jump scares and loud noises for cheap jolts. Skarsgård manages to be creepy from time to time, but every time the animated sequences kick in, they are very poorly realized, and are probably more of a result of a rushed production than anything else. The film feels a good half hour to 45 minutes too short in the end, losing a lot of character development, and as I stated before, it's almost missing a lot of the foreshadowing in some places. The film also seems to try to avoid doing a lot of the same scenes as in the miniseries, the same way at least, and in the process a lot of important scenes and character development is left out, which is what a lot of casual viewers may need to connect to the story. WB had the opportunity to give us at least a 3-hour film each, and not to excise so much from the story. The end does feel like we are a bit cheated, and is not as climactic as one would probably hope, and of course is set up for the inevitable sequel. Here's a situation where we have the opposite of The Hobbit from a few years ago, where one book should have probably been made into a trilogy or 2 very long films. Either way, we are left with what we have, and though it's not as bad as it could have been, it's not nearly as good as it should have been either. The best I can do for it is 6 out of 10 stars.
If you like this video, then please hit that subscribe button. Due to recent changes by YouTube, we'd also like to ask all of our subscribers to please hit that bell icon. That way you'll be notified when new content is uploaded. If you enjoy our content, then please consider supporting this channel through Patreon. As thanks, patrons will receive early access to mini documentaries, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, special Lost episodes, and more. Please join us for more spin-free news and analysis of your favorite genre movies, as well as backgrounds and context of your favorite characters, and roundtable discussions here at Midnight's Edge After Dark.